Before you scroll past your spare change, listen to this. Some Mercury Dimes that look completely ordinary have sold for thousands, even over six figures at auction. Welcome back to State Quarter. Today, we're taking a closer look at three overlooked dates: the 1919D, 1931S, and 1938S, and the tiny details and conditions that can turn them into serious money. If you're a collector or just curious about hidden value, this is one you don't want to miss. Let's get started with the first coin. You are holding a 1919 Mercury Dime with the D mint mark. And right now, before you do anything else, before you put it back in that drawer or toss it in a jar with your pocket change, you need to stop and understand exactly what is sitting in your hand. Because this small silver coin struck over 100 years ago at the Denver Mint is not what most people think it is when they first see it. The face value stamped on this coin is 10 cents. That is what the United States government said it was worth when Denver struck it in 1919, 1 year after the guns of World War I finally went silent and America was picking up the pieces of a world that had been torn apart by years of global conflict. The nation needed coins. The economy needed to keep moving, and the Denver Mint did its job and produced this dime. But here is what the government did not account for. Here is what nobody in 1919 could have predicted. And here is the part that matters to you right now, sitting wherever you are reading this. That 10-cent face value has been irrelevant for decades. And the real-world market value of this coin, depending on its condition, can range from $15 all the way up to $156,000. And that is not an exaggeration. That is a documented auction result from 2019. When one of the finest known examples of this exact coin crossed the auction block and shattered every expectation the numismatic world had going into that sale. The design on this coin was created by a German-born American sculptor named Adolf Weinmann, and the story of how his design ended up on America's dime is one of the great moments in United States mint history. The Treasury Department in the early 1900s was desperate to modernize American coinage because the coins designed by chief engraver Charles Barber had been in circulation for years and were widely considered stiff, uninspired, and unworthy of a nation that was growing into a world power. So the Treasury opened design competitions and invited outside artists to submit their ideas. And from over 50 submissions, they chose Weinmann's proposal featuring Lady Liberty wearing a winged Phrygian cap, the ancient classical symbol of freedom and liberated thought. The wings on the cap led everyday Americans to nickname this coin the Mercury Dime, because the image reminded them of Mercury, the Roman messenger god who was traditionally depicted with wings on his helmet. The name stuck even though the coin technically depicts liberty and not Mercury, and the Mercury Dime name has been used by collectors, dealers, and auction houses ever since. The reverse of this coin shows a Roman fasces, which is a bundle of rods bound tightly around an axe, intertwined with an olive branch. The fasces symbolizing unity and collective strength, while the olive branch represents peace, together forming one of the most artistically balanced reverse designs ever placed on an American coin. Every element of this coin was intentional, every detail was deliberate, and Weinmann poured genuine artistic vision into a piece that was going to be handled by tens of millions of ordinary Americans going about their daily lives in the early 20th century. Now, the Denver mint mark on this coin, that small letter D on the reverse above the fasces, is what separates this particular 1919 Mercury Dime from the more common Philadelphia issue and puts it in a completely different category of collector value. Philadelphia struck over 35 million Mercury Dimes in 1919, flooding the market with coins that survived in relatively large numbers across all grade levels. Denver did not have that kind of output, and the 1919D has a mintage profile that created a genuine condition rarity, meaning that while examples in worn grades are findable, examples in truly pristine, uncirculated condition are extraordinarily scarce, and the prices they command reflect that. Scarcity with brutal clarity. In a good grade, which means the coin is heavily worn but still clearly identifiable with the date and major design elements legible, the 1919 D Mercury Dime is worth roughly $10 to $15, already sitting well above its silver melt value and reflecting the age and collector interest in. This piece, in fine condition, where more detail is visible and the coin shows moderate wear across the high points, values move into the $25 to $40 range. Very fine condition, which is the sweet spot for a lot of circulated coins where significant detail is still sharp and the coin presents well, brings $60 to $80 for the 1919D. Push into extremely fine territory where only the very highest points show any wear at all and the rest of the design is sharp and bold, and you are looking at values in the range of $100 to $150. About uncirculated examples, where traces of original mint luster are still visible under the light and only the slightest friction marks touch the highest relief points, regularly sell for $200 to $350 depending on eye appeal and the specific buyer. Then comes the mint state world, and this is where the 1919D separates itself from the pack completely. An MS-63 example of this coin, which is uncirculated but shows some contact marks or minor abrasions from post-strike handling in the mint bags, is worth approximately $400 to $600. MS-64 moves into the $800 to $1,200 range. MS-65, which is a gem-quality uncirculated coin with strong luster, sharp strike, and only minimal marks, is valued at roughly $3,000 to $6,000 depending on the specific coin and the market conditions at the time of sale. And then you reach the single most important designation in the entire Mercury Dime collecting world, the designation that transforms these coins from valuable collectibles into life-changing assets at the top of the grade scale. And that designation is full bands. Full bands means that the horizontal bands crossing the center of the fasces on the reverse of the coin are completely and clearly separated from each other, showing sharp, distinct lines with no merging, no weakness, and no softness anywhere across the bands when examined under magnification. The Denver Mint in 1919 produced coins with inconsistent striking pressure, and fully separated bands on the 1919D are so rarely encountered that even finding one certified by PCGs or NGC is a significant event in the collecting community. An MS-65 full band 1919D is worth $15,000 to $35,000. An MS-66 full bands example moves into the $50,000 to $100,000 territory. The finest certified examples of the 1919D Mercury Dime have sold for $156,000 at auction, a documented result that placed this coin among the most valuable Mercury Dimes of the entire series and reminded every collector who thought they knew this market that condition rarity is the most powerful force in numismatic pricing. The error varieties on the 1919D add another entire dimension to the collecting story around this coin. The broader 1919 Mercury Dime family is famous for the 1919 Philadelphia Double Die Obverse, cataloged as Fs101 in the Thieves Stanton reference, which shows extreme doubling on the obverse motto, "In God We Trust," most visibly on the letters G, O, and D in the word God, and on the letters R, U, and S in the word trust. This doubling is a Class 1 double die variety created when the obverse die was impressed by working hubs with different spacings between the letters, and the variety was known to collectors but remained relatively obscure until around 2015 when major grading services began widely recognizing and attributing examples, causing a surge in demand and values for confirmed specimens. Only around 10 examples were known when the variety was first widely publicized, making any confirmed 1919 DUFS 101 an extreme rarity worth thousands of dollars regardless of grade. Beyond the double die, the 1919D is also watched closely for repunched mint mark varieties, where the D mint mark shows evidence of having been punched into the working die more than once, leaving ghost images or slight doubling of the mint mark itself visible under magnification. A confirmed RPM on a 1919D adds meaningful premium at any grade level. Off-center strikes on this coin, where misalignment of the coin blank in the striking collar produced a design shifted away from center with a crescent of blank planche visible on one or more sides, can sell for $100 to several $100 purely as error collectibles, regardless of the grade of the design detail that is present. Clipped planche errors, where the coin blank was punched from the silver strip in an area overlapping a previously punched hole, Create coins with a curved bite missing from the edge, and these pieces bring $50 to $200 depending on the size and visual drama of the clip. Die cracks running through the design, small raised lines on the coin surface created by fractures in the die metal itself, are also sought by variety collectors and add modest but real premiums to any example that shows them prominently. The silver composition of this coin is 90% silver and 10% copper, with a total weight of 2.5 grams, and at current silver market prices, the melt value of any 1919 D Mercury Dime in any condition is roughly $3 to $4, making that number the absolute bottom floor below which this coin will never trade, regardless of how worn or damaged it might be. Everything above that melt floor is pure collector premium, and the spread between $3 of silver and $156,000 of collector value on the finest examples is the most compelling argument you will ever hear for why studying these old coins carefully before selling or dismissing them is one of the smartest financial habits any American can develop. If you are holding a 1919 D Mercury Dime right now and you have not looked at it under a loupe, you have not examined those reverse fasces bands under direct light, and you have not submitted it to PCGs or NGC for professional grading and attribution, then you genuinely do not know what you have. Get that done before the next coin, because what is coming next involves the Great Depression, a 2-year mint shutdown, and an auction result that turned the entire coin collecting world upside down. Next up, you are looking at a 1931 S Mercury Dime, and the S mint mark on this coin stands for San Francisco, and that single letter combined with the date 1931 tells a story that goes far beyond numismatics and reaches into one of the most painful and defining periods in all of American history, the Great Depression. Understanding what this coin is worth today requires understanding what America was going through when it was made, because the economic conditions of 1931 shaped the survival rate of this coin, determined how many examples made it through the next 90 years in anything resembling good condition, and ultimately created the scarcity that drives the extraordinary values collectors and investors pay for top-grade examples today. The face value of this coin is 10 cents. That face value in 1931 was meaningful in ways that people today struggle to fully appreciate, because 10 cents in the depths of the Great Depression was not pocket change. It was a resource. It was something families held on to and spent carefully because the economic collapse that began with the stock market crash of October 1929 had wiped out roughly $30 billion in national wealth and left millions of Americans scrambling for every cent they could find. The San Francisco Mint struck 1,800,000 of these dimes in 1931. And that mintage number already tells you something important about the state of the American economy at the time. Production of Mercury Dimes had plummeted by 67% from 1929 to 1930, and then dropped by another 47% from 1930 to 1931, because demand for new coinage had cratered along with every other sector of the economy. People were not spending money freely, they were hoarding coins, wearing them down through heavy circulation because the alternatives were unthinkable. And then after striking these 1931 dimes at 3 facilities, including San Francisco, the United States Mint stopped producing dimes entirely for 1932 and 1933. 2 full years of zero dime production. No Mercury Dimes were struck anywhere in America during those 2 years. Which means the 1931 S is not just a scarce coin, it is the final chapter of the first great era of Mercury Dime coinage before a production blackout that lasted until 1934. If anyone ever tries to sell you a 1932 or 1933 Mercury Dime, those coins do not exist in genuine form and are counterfeits, period. The 1931 S is the last of its kind from that era, and the market treats it accordingly. In worn circulated condition, the 1931 S Mercury Dime is already a meaningful coin worth real money. A good grade heavily worn example brings roughly $6 to $12. Fine condition moves to $15 to $25. Very fine sits at $30 to $50. Extremely fine examples are worth $60 to $90, depending on the specific coin and current silver prices. About uncirculated pieces with visible luster traces and minimal friction sell for $75 to $150 at reputable dealers and coin shows across the country. These are solid numbers for any coin that started life as a 10-cent piece, but the real story of the 1931S is in the mint state grades, where condition rarity drives values to levels that would seem impossible if the auction records did not exist to prove them. An MS-63 example is worth approximately $250 to $400. MS-64 climbs to $450 to $750. MS-65 moves into the $1,000 to $2,000 range for a clean gem uncirculated example. And then you reach the full bands designation, and the 1931S transforms into one of the most aggressively collected and fiercely competed over coins in the entire Mercury Dime series. Full bands on a Mercury Dime means the three horizontal bands crossing the fasces on the reverse are completely separated and sharply defined, with no merging, no bridging, no weakness anywhere across the band area when examined under magnification. This designation matters on every Mercury Dime date, but it matters more on the 1931S than on almost any other coin in the series, because the 1931S is specifically known as the scarcest of the three 1931 mint varieties when seeking full bands examples. Despite having a higher mintage than the 1931 Denver issue, the 1931S shows up with full bands designation far less frequently than either the Philadelphia or Denver coins, because the San Francisco Mint throughout the Mercury Dime era had a persistent tendency towards softer strikes that failed to fully develop the central band details on the reverse. Full bands examples from San Francisco are chronically underrepresented in certified populations across nearly every date in the series, and the 1931S is one of the most extreme examples of this pattern. An MS-65 full bands 1931S is worth approximately $5,000 to $10,000. MS-66 full bands moves into the $15,000 to $25,000 territory. MS-67 full bands examples have sold at heritage auctions for $37,375, $40,250, and similar figures in multiple documented sale results. These are extraordinary numbers for a coin that began with a face value of 10 cents and was struck during a period when the American economy was at its absolute lowest point. And then there is the single most spectacular result in the history of this coin: the sale that cemented the 1931S Mercury Dime's place among the elite rarities of 20th century American numismatics. A PCG's MS-67 plus full bands example of the 1931S, the absolute finest certified specimen of this date at the time of sale, crossed the auction block at Legend Rare Coin Auctions in June 2019 and sold for $270,250. That number is not a typo. $270,000 for a coin that started life as a 10-cent piece, struck during the worst economic crisis in American history, surviving over 80 years in a state of preservation so extraordinary that professional graders assigned it the highest grade ever given to a 1931S Mercury Dime, a population one at the time of sale, the very best of the best. That result proves beyond any argument that the Mercury Dime series, even in its common dates and accessible issues, contains within it the possibility for values that rival rare gold coins, early American rarities, and the most celebrated pieces in all of world numismatics. The historical survival context for this coin adds another layer of significance that serious collectors understand deeply. Because of the Great Depression, the overwhelming majority of 1931 S-dimes that were placed into circulation were worn down to almost nothing through constant heavy use by families who needed every coin to matter. The estimated total surviving population across all grades is roughly 10,000 examples, and that number represents coins in every condition from barely identifiable scraps of silver all the way up to the population 1 MS-67 plus full band specimen that sold for over $250,000. Among those 10,000 survivors, the number in mint state condition is dramatically smaller, and the number with full band designation is smaller still, and the number in MS-67 plus full bands is exactly 2 coins certified by PCGs as of early 2025. 2 coins in the entire world at that grade level. That is the population you are competing against when you try to acquire the finest example of this issue, which is why the prices escalate to the levels they do when these coins appear at auction. The collector demand for registry-set quality Mercury Dimes is intense. The pools of capital available to top-tier collectors are substantial, and when a Population 1 or Population 2 coin comes up for sale, the bidding reflects that intensity without compromise. Regarding error varieties and special die issues on the 1931S, the coin is not known for dramatic major varieties the way some earlier Mercury Dimes are, but any example showing a repunched S mint mark, where the San Francisco mint mark was punched into the working die more than once, leaving a shadow or doubled image of the S visible under magnification, carries a meaningful premium above standard pricing at any grade level. Die cracks and die breaks on the 1931S are documented and collected by variety specialists, as the worn dies used during Depression-era production were sometimes pushed beyond their normal service life because replacement die costs were a concern during budget cuts. Any prominent die crack running through major design elements on a 1931S is worth noting and researching. Lamination errors where impurities in the silver-copper alloy cause the coin's surface to show peeling or flaking are known and add collector interest. The silver content of this coin is 90% silver and 10% copper, with a total weight of 2.5 grams, giving it a melt value of roughly $3 to $4 at current silver prices, meaning the premium above melt on even the most modest circulated example is already significant, and on the finest mint-state full bands pieces, the premium above melt is measured in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Every single 1931S Mercury Dime that exists is worth more than 10 cents. Most are worth more than their silver weight, and the best ones are worth more than many people's houses. Stay with this series because the final coin coming up did something in 2019 that no coin collector anywhere on Earth predicted, and the number it sold for will change forever how you think about the word common. Next up, the 1938 S Mercury Dime is the coin that broke the entire numismatic world. In 2019, and reminded every single collector, dealer, investor, and casual coin holder on the planet that the word common in coin collecting is always and forever relative to condition. Because a coin that you can buy in average worn condition for $3, a coin with a face value of 10 cents, a coin described in basic coin books as a common date accessible to beginning collectors on a budget. That exact coin in the right state of preservation sold at auction for $364,250. $364,000. That is the real story of the 1938 S Mercury Dime, and if you have one somewhere in your possession, you need to understand every single thing about this coin before you decide what it is worth and what to do with it. The San Francisco Mint struck 8,090,000 of these dimes in 1938, which is a substantial mintage by any measure, and the primary reason why this coin is classified as common in standard references. 8 million coins sounds like plenty, and in circulated grades where most of those 8 million pieces ended up after decades of pocket-to-pocket, register-to-register, hand-to-hand commerce, the 1938S is genuinely plentiful and inexpensive. But mintage numbers only tell you how many were made. They tell you absolutely nothing about how many survived in perfect, uncirculated condition with every design element struck up sharp and full. And that distinction is where the entire financial story of this coin lives. The year 1938 was itself a fascinating moment in American history. The country was still working its way out of the shadow of the Great Depression. The New Deal programs of Franklin Roosevelt had been running for years and had begun to stabilize the economy, and American silver coinage was moving through a period of relative normalcy after the dramatic low mintages of the early 1930s. Lady Liberty, on the obverse of this coin, wears her winged Phrygian cap, Adolph Weinman's iconic design that had been on American dimes since 1916 and would remain there until 1945, when Franklin Roosevelt's portrait replaced it following his death. The 1938S is part of the classic Mercury Dime era, one of the most artistically beloved series in all of American coinage, and it shares with every other Mercury Dime the silver composition of 90% silver and 10% copper, a a total weight of 2.5 grams, a diameter of 17.9 millimeters, and a reeded edge. The melt value of any 1938 Mercury Dime in any condition is roughly $3 to $4 based on current silver market pricing. And that $3 to $4 is the absolute floor below which this coin will never fall as long as silver retains any market value at all. Now here is the complete value picture across every grade level so you know exactly where your coin sits. In average circulated condition, a 1938 Mercury Dime is worth roughly $3 to $18 depending on how much wear it shows. Fine condition brings $8 to $15. Very fine sits at $12 to $20. Extremely fine brings $20 to $35. About uncirculated examples with visible luster traces sell for $30 to $50. These are the everyday collector prices for circulated examples, and they are honest, real market values. In the lower mint state grades, MS60 through MS62, the 1938 is worth $30 to $60. Nice coins that show no wear but have contact marks from the mint bags. MS63 is worth $60 to $100. MS64 moves into the $100 to $175 range. MS65, which is a true gem quality uncirculated coin with strong cartwheel luster, minimal marks, and sharp strike, is worth roughly $150 to $300 for a non-full bands example. These are respectable numbers for a common date dime, and they reflect a healthy market for Mercury dimes across the board. But now the full bands designation enters the picture, and everything changes with mathematical certainty at every single grade level. Full bands means the three horizontal bands crossing the fasces on the reverse of the coin are completely and cleanly separated from each other, showing sharp, distinct divisions with no merging, no bridging, no weakness, and no softness anywhere across the band area when examined under. Magnification. The San Francisco Mint throughout the Mercury Dime era had a well-documented pattern of producing coins with inconsistent striking pressure that frequently failed to fully develop the central design elements, particularly the bands on the fasces, and the 1938 is no exception to this pattern. Finding a 1938 with full bands designation in any mint state grade is meaningfully harder than finding one without it. And finding one in the highest mint state grades with full bands is so extraordinary that the certified population at the very top is measured in single digits. An MS65 full bands 1938 is worth roughly $250 to $500, already a significant premium over the non-full bands price. MS66 full bands moves to $500 to $1,500. MS67 full bands is where the coin crosses into the $2,000 to $5,000 range. MS68 full bands examples, which are extraordinarily rare, move into the $10,000 to $25,000 territory based on gray sheet pricing data and documented sale results. And then there is the MS68 Plus full bands example with the CAC green sticker, the Certified Acceptance Corporation approval, indicating that within the MS68 Plus grade, this coin was exceptional even by that standard. And that coin sold for $364,250 at Legends Regency auction in Las Vegas on June 27, 2019. The full context around that 2019 sale is critical for understanding why that number happened and why it was not some fluke or anomaly, but rather the completely logical conclusion of a market responding to genuine rarity at the absolute peak of condition. The auction house estimated the coin would bring $10,000 to $12,500, which was already a strong price for a 1938 Mercury Dime by any historical standard. What happened instead was a bidding war driven by registry set collectors who understood that this coin was the single finest certified example of this date in existence. A population 1 specimen at the highest grade ever assigned to a 1938 Mercury Dime. And that such opportunities do not come up often, do not come up predictably. And when they do, the collector who walks away without it may wait a decade or longer before another comparable example surfaces. The coin was rainbow-toned, showing the natural multicolor iridescence that develops on silver coins held in original condition over many decades. a quality that PCGs and the collecting community reward with additional eye appeal premiums on top of the technical grade. The combination of MS68 Plus grade, full bands designation, CAC approval, rainbow toning, and Population 1 status created a perfect storm of desirability that pushed the final realized price to a level that made international numismatic news and reset the entire community's understanding of what the 1938S could be worth at its absolute finest. The era variety landscape on the 1938S adds additional collecting dimensions for those interested in going beyond standard date and mint mark collecting. The most commonly encountered error type on 1938 Mercury Dimes is the double die variety, where the working die was accidentally engraved with a doubled image during the hubbing process, transferring that doubling onto the coin during striking. Any 1938S showing visible doubling on the obverse design elements, particularly on the date numerals, the word Liberty on the headband, the motto In God We Trust, or Lady Liberty's facial features, should be examined carefully under magnification and submitted to a professional grading service for attribution and certification. A confirmed double die on a 1938S in mint state condition adds several hundred to several $1,000s above standard pricing, depending on the grade and the prominence of the doubling. Struck-off centerpieces where misalignment between the coin blank and the striking collar produced a design visibly shifted away from center with a blank crescent of planchet visible on one or more sides are known, and sell for $100 to $300 in circulated grades purely as error collectibles. Clipped planchet errors where the coin blank was punched from the silver strip in an area overlapping a previous punch hole produce pieces with a curved or straight bite missing from the edge, and these bring $50 to $200 depending on clip size and visual impact. Die cracks and die breaks running through major design elements are documented and collected by specialists in Mercury Dime die varieties. The proof version of the 1938 Mercury Dime, struck at Philadelphia specifically for sale to collectors, is a separate and entirely distinct coin from the circulation strike 1938S, but deserves mention because it represents another dimension of 1938 Mercury Dime collecting. Only 8,728 proof examples were struck, making them scarce collector coins from birth. A proof 1938 Mercury Dime, graded PR 69 by NGC, sold for $32,200 at Heritage Auctions in February 2005. And lower grade proof examples in PR 64 to PR 67 range from $210 to $920, with exceptional cameo contrast examples essentially non-existent and extraordinarily valuable if genuine examples are ever confirmed. The silver melt value floor, the circulated collector values, the uncirculated premiums, the full bands multipliers, the error variety premiums, the proof versions, and the absolute auction ceiling of $364,000 altogether form a complete picture of a coin that operates at every level of the numismatic market simultaneously, from the beginner buying their first Mercury Dime set to the world-class registry collector spending the equivalent of a luxury home purchase on a single 10-cent piece. The 1938 S Mercury Dime is proof that greatness in coin collecting is never about what a coin is supposed to be worth on paper. It is always, entirely, and completely about what condition it survived in and who wants it badly enough to pay for that survival. Thanks for watching and happy collecting.